Hi, and welcome back to a special post-hiatus episode of InstaVision. We're tanned, rested, and ready here. Well, one interesting thing that happened over the summer while we were on hiatus was a column by Conn Carroll at Town Hall called The Case for Libertarian Populism. Conn Carroll is an editor at Town Hall, and he's here to talk with us about it now. Well, welcome, Conn.
It's a pleasure to be talking to you, Glenn.
So what do you mean by libertarian populism? People usually think of libertarianism and populism as kind of opposites.
Sure. I think what a lot of conservatives want to do these days is they want to pursue populist ends like breaking up the banks in Wall Street, but through libertarian means. If you look at the big banks today, they only exist, they're only so big because they're partners with big government. And my article points out a number of ways in which we can shrink government and therefore shrink the bailout, shrink the banks and control the size of government.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true that, the instinct of a lot of libertarians is to defend free enterprise. But when you look at, Wall Street and the big banks, which are so intertwined with government, you're not really talking about free enterprise. It's something that looks a lot more like crony capitalism.
Absolutely. When you look at the number of banks on Wall Street, you find that the number of deposits in the largest banks has only grown, and the population, the problem has only gotten worse since Dodd-Frank became law. And there are a number of reasons why this is so, but if you're able to look at the regulatory framework, there are some small fixes you can do to kind of fix the whole problem. And one of the ones that I look at in my article is basically just means testing the FDIC. This is a guarantee that the federal government gives to banks to ensure deposits. But if we only offered that to small banks with less than $50 billion in assets, then the larger banks would either have to let go of their commercial banking or shrink in size.
So the corporatist model, which you talk about, which is a lot like what Walter Russell Mead calls the blue model, is failing. Why is it, and what comes next?
Sure. Well, basically, in order to, get rid of the corporatist model, you have to have something new and different. And basically, that just means smaller governments and smaller businesses to go with it. Government not in so many things. If you look at the areas of the economy which are we spend the most money, but there hasn't been any growth or change in recent years, you're looking at healthcare and education. And those are also two sectors that are heavily controlled by the government. If we were just to pare back government involvement in those sectors would be able to modernize, adapt, and change and bring many of the changes and betterment that we've seen in other sectors of the economy.
So the typical Republican approach over the last, 30-plus years has been to call for tax cuts. And you say now that's not enough. Well, what do we need?
Well, basically just shrinking the size and scope of government when it comes to every issue. For example, healthcare. Obviously, we have Obamacare, which is in many ways a government takeover of the healthcare industry. If we were to start paring that back by getting rid of the individual mandate, getting rid of the employer mandate, relying less on businesses, employers to be the ones that buy and purchase healthcare for people. If we stop forcing people to get in healthcare through a third party, then we'd have more incentives for people to buy and shop for their own healthcare, and there'd be more experimentation by providers in trying to provide the best care for the least cost.
One thing you talk about as libertarian populism is ending the drug war. Is that, I know it's libertarian, but is it really populist?
Well, it's populist because more and more people are against the drug war. Majorities of people now would like to see marijuana decriminalized. And I think we should go take a step in that direction. I wouldn't say we should go ahead and legalize it, but we should decriminalize it. We should make it possible for law enforcement to focus on things that actually harm other people. And yes, there will still be problems with drugs, just as there are problems with alcohol. But we combat alcohol abuse through drunk driving and other laws, and we can do the same with drugs.
And what about eliminating the marriage penalty? That's another proposal of yours. I can sort of see that one flying a little more.
Well, the marriage penalty, a lot of people think about it, and they just think about it through taxes. But there's a much, much larger marriage penalty that affects lower income people that receive government assistance. Think of any government program, Medicaid, food stamps, aid to family dependent children, welfare, SNAP, all of those have very steep cliffs that people get to on income. So for an average low-income couple that wants to get married, they're going to get on average about a 20% income shock because they start phasing out of all these programs. If we were to end that marriage penalty and just say you can keep your eligibility for whatever programs you had before you got married when you are married, we would encourage a lot more marriage among lower income people, and a lot more of these marriages would survive. And of course, as any conservative know, the best cure for poverty is stable marriages.
And one thing you call for is ending security theater. Why is that?
Oh, I mean, if there's any better example of big government, useless big government, it's seeing your grandma or your own toddler or your own son getting frisked by TSA people. This is a federal agency that didn't exist before 9/11, that has zero proof that it actually adds any security. And look at Europe as an example. Europe does not have big government unionized airport security. They have private security taking care of it, and the security in Europe among airports is just fine.
And his new book, The New Class Conflict, Joel Kotkin talks about, well, a new class conflict in America that's divided between the very, very rich, the oligarchs, the Silicon Valley types, the media, academia, and the government bureaucrats, what he calls the clerisy, all at the expense of the middle class. Is your analysis similar to his?
I think they are very similar. I mean, anytime you have an incumbent system, in this case, this corporatism, which is kind of built off of an industrial World War II model economy, you're going to have an incumbent class that benefits from that system. And so in California, which Joel talks about a lot, you have a lot of this working out. You have a kind of a landed aristocracy on the coasts that have been there forever, that derive a lot of their wealth from real estate. Then you have Silicon Valley and Hollywood, the incumbent industries, and then you have a mass beneath that, a mass of many Californians who are very low income, subsist on the government, etc. And in between, all you have left is government bureaucrats and academia. And all the rest of the middle class families have been forced out of California. The New York Times recently, a couple of months ago, had a great video and a graphic about which states are importing people to different countries. And California stopped importing people in the 1980s and instead has just been exporting tons of Americans to all the surrounding states, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, even as far away as Wyoming, have been taking in middle-class Californians that have just been either priced out of real estate there, or they're too wealthy to qualify for any programs.
So what comes next? It's nice to have proposals in an op-ed. It's nice to have us talk about these here, but how's the rubber going to meet the road? What politicians are going to get behind this?
There's definitely people in the Republican Party that see this vision and are taking steps in that direction. Rand Paul's not perfect, but he gets it. He's been trying to implement many of these policies. I think the best champion right now, even though he might not describe himself as a libertarian populist, would be Jeb Hensarling in the House. He's been tackling Fannie and Freddie. He's been attacking the financial system. He's been leading the fight against the Export-Import Bank. This is the future of the Republican Party. If you look at the tax plan that Dave Camp put out, it called for paring back the mortgage deduction and using that money to lower rates. So Republicans get it. This is the way that they can modernize the conservative movement. And hopefully, John Boehner's not going to be the speaker forever. Hopefully we'll see Jeb Hensarling move into leadership and really embrace this vision.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
And that was Conn Carroll. He's an editor at townhall.com, and his article is The Case for Libertarian Populism. It's very interesting. And thanks to you for your interest in us. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, have fun on the internet. Thanks.